Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our TimeXtender Tuesday. My name is Trine Stuhr, and I am a solution specialist in TimeXtender, and I will be your host for today. I'm very excited about today's episode, where I will give you some tips and tricks about how you can use PowerShell and our TimeXtender API key. I will not go into too many details about PowerShell, as you're probably all very familiar with it, but in its simplest form, PowerShell is this cross-platform shell and scripting language that allows people to manage various tasks from the command line. So whether you have your data infrastructure on-prem or on Azure, you can use PowerShell for a lot of things. And if you didn't already know this, I can gladly inform you that it is possible to execute and schedule PowerShell scripts from within TimeXtender, and by that automate various tasks in your data flow. So this really opens up for a lot of possibilities. Recently, we also released our new API key, so you can now integrate your TimeXtender jobs and executions to other technologies, and you can also extract data around jobs to, for instance, monitor the performance of those. So I hope this has already caught your attention a bit. In today's episode, we will work with a case where we will automate an end-to-end job that delivers updated data each morning. We will explore how we can use PowerShell to scale up and down some Azure resources to take performance, but also costs into consideration. For end-to-end executions, we can use the feature called ODX On Demand to move data from our source into our modern data warehouse. But this feature is not yet available if you are using Azure Data Factory. But do not worry, if that is the case, then you can use PowerShell together with our API key. So hang on there, and let's start this session off with a realistic case.
Say hi to Maria, a data analyst working for a fashion company. As the company gets ready for their busiest time of the year, Black Week, Maria finds herself at the epicenter of a crucial mission. Last year, they experienced some data was not updated accurately, and as a consequence, they had to turn down some orders as the inventory showed products that were not available. This led to bad Trustpilot ratings. It became clear that their direct Power BI data management approach led to inconsistencies and tangled data dependencies. Maria and her team have done a lot of work to prevent this from happening again this year, but there is still work to be done before they are ready for Black Week. They have built a solid data warehouse in TimeXtender, where they have consolidated all data into one single source of truth. They are using a Microsoft Azure architecture, and they expect a need to scale up some resources during Black Week to meet high data demands. So Maria is on a mission. First, she wants to automate every intricate step in the company's complex data flow. Why? To ensure that every store receives up-to-date sales insights each morning via a dynamic Power BI report, and for the warehouses to send and receive updated inventory status so they can deliver an accurate replenishment. And secondly, Maria is determined to do this in a cost-efficient way. As we navigate through this session, observe how Maria takes on this challenge. We'll uncover how the use of TimeXtender, PowerShell, and the new API key functionality equips her to transform data management. Her goal? To ensure accuracy, reliability, and optimal cost control, all while steering the ship through the stormy seas of Black Week. Let's get started.
Before we jump into TimeXtender to help Maria tackle her challenges, I will simplify this as much as possible and try to explain to you in this one visual what is about to go on. So the architecture we're using today are fully Azure-based, but please remember that the solution I'm showing today can also easily be copied to other architecture types with just a bit of modification. First of all, we're using Azure Data Factory for our data movement from source to our Azure Data Lake. And we're doing this with a combination of our PowerShell and our API key. After that, we execute a script that scales up our Azure SQL database from basic to premium to meet the high data demands that was just described in the use case. And this is done just before the execution of our entire modern data warehouse. When that is done, we make sure to scale down our database again from premium to basic to save costs. And finally, just before we execute the semantic layers, so we get updated data in our reports, we also execute a PowerShell script that starts up our Power BI Premium capacity. Please notice that all of these executions are happening within one job that we will schedule to run on a daily basis. And as a little extra thing, we will also track these executions directly in a Power BI report, just to make Maria's life a little easier so she can check this every morning. No surprise, this Power BI report gets fed with data from our API. Some of you may be thinking that it has always been possible to execute PowerShell scripts outside TimeXtender. And yes, that is of course true, but the huge strength of getting it into TimeXtender and into your data flow is that you do not need to code all the dependencies between your executions, and you also have everything in one place within TimeXtender. And our data analyst, Maria, is not very experienced writing code, so she wants to accomplish this in the easiest way possible. These are the steps that we will go through in just a few seconds. But first, please notice that there are a few things that you would need to install in order for you to use PowerShell. I will not go through those today, but do not worry. All guides, the scripts I will be using, and other relevant knowledge base articles will be linked to by the end of this. Another important thing just to mention before we get started is that if you are working with PowerShell in a production environment, please make sure that you do not have any sensitive tokens, API keys, passwords, etc. in your scripts in plain text. Think about working with Windows environment variables, Azure Key Vault, or any other means to securely store and manage these secrets. And now it's time for us to jump into TimeXtender and help Maria tackle her challenges and get her company geared up for a busy Black Week. Let's go ahead and open up our operational data exchange and let's have a look at those two data sources that needs to be included in this end-to-end job. The first one is our inventory data source, and for this one we can simply hit edit data source and we can then go into the advanced settings and enable the data on demand. As it states right here, it means when this is enabled, then going forward, whenever we do an execution of our modern data warehouse and those tables coming from this source, TimeXtender will automatically trigger a transfer of the data from source to the ODX stores before then it ingests our modern data warehouse. So this one was relatively simple. The other data source that we need to include in our job is the sales data source. This is the one where we are using Azure Data Factory for the movement. And as we can not yet at least use the ODX on demand feature on this one, We will instead just combine our API key with PowerShell to still be able to include it in the job. First step is to have the transfer task in place, because we need to include this in a separate job. So as you can see here, this is the transfer tasks that are selected for execution. This is also the job that we will use our API key to call within a PowerShell script. So next step for us is to go into the portal and create the API key. You do this in the admin and security and permissions page, and you create a key simply by giving it a name, hit generate API key, and it will afterwards be displayed right here. As we're also mentioning up here, please remember to save it elsewhere, somewhere safe, because once you leave this dialog, it will be remain hidden for security reasons afterwards. I did already create one that we are using today. Next on is to import the TimeXtender Postman collection to extract a few other variables that we will need in our PowerShell script. You can find the Postman collection directly in our community, where we have a direct link for you to download the collection. And while it is downloading, let's go ahead and open up Postman. And I have already imported the file we just downloaded, but it is simply just being done by drag and dropping your file here. I will quickly show you those other variables that we need to save for us to be able to use them in our PowerShell script. It is, besides the API key we just generated, we also need the subscription key and the domain key. So please go ahead and also save them somewhere else for later use. I have them here in my notepad, my key, subscription key, and my domain name. Let's quickly go into the collection and then send a request where we get a list of all the jobs we have in TimeXtender. As you can see down here, this is the one we are interested in today. And I did also save this name together with my other variables. So what's left for us to do is simply now going back to TimeXtender and open up our execution part of our modern data warehouse. And down at the external executables, this is where you can add your PowerShell scripts. So let's go ahead and have a quick look at the scripts I already created. The first one is the ODX transfer of our Asia Data Factory data source. And Maria, our data analyst, does not have a lot of experience writing code, but she is so lucky that she had a good colleague, Frank, who's a data scientist, and it took him very short time to put this script together to help her. And what she basically needed to do was then to insert the job name and the API key, subscription key, and the domain name. And what the script is then doing is that, first of all, it is verifying that the job is not already running. If that is the case, then it triggers an execution. Next on, we also wanted to make sure that we can scale up and down our Azure SQL database before and after we execute the modern data warehouse. So if we open this one up, you can see that the script is setting the Azure SQL database to the edition Premium. And for the scale down part, it sets the edition back to basic. Besides the scale up and down of our Azure SQL database, we also want to create a script that can start and also stop our Power BI Premium capacity. As you know, Power BI Premium is not cheap, so we do not want it to run while we are not using it. So the start package or script goes in and resumes our resource, and the stop part goes in and suspends it again. That is all the scripts we need to use, and before we can jump straight to the job itself, we need to include these scripts in separate packages. So I have done this for all of them, and as you can see, it is as simple as adding a package and then drag and drop the external executables into the include step. I've done the exact same with the scale up, scale down, and start and stop Power BI Premium. Instead of having to execute the entire data warehouse each morning, Maria has done another smart thing in TimeXtender. She created a perspective that only looks for the sales and inventory data. So this limits the amount of data that we need to update and execute in the modern data warehouse. So last step is now to add everything to a job, and I have created this job called end-to-end sales and inventory. And if we open this one up, you can then see the sequence that TimeXtender will execute all of these packages in. So we have the ODX transfer, we have the scale up before we execute the perspective we have on our modern data warehouse. We scale down again and we start our Power BI Premium capacity before we then execute our semantic layers. Please also just remember that we only have the sales ODX transfer included in here. We did enable the ODX on demand, so automatically before this one is being triggered, TimeXtender will go in and do a transfer of the inventory data from source to ODX before it then ingests the modern data warehouse. So let's go ahead and execute this one, and let's wait a few minutes for it to be done.
A few moments later.
Welcome back. We are reaching the end of this session, and there is just a few more things we need to do. Obviously, we need to check the status of the job, but just before we do that, let's go in and manage the schedule, where I have created a schedule that runs now each morning at 6 o'clock from Monday to Sunday. How to check the status of the job can be done in a few different ways. One way is to just check it manually via the execution log. A second way of doing it is to set up notifications, so you receive email in your inbox every morning telling you whether it succeeded or failed. But a third way of doing it is to use all the data we now have available via the API key. And I have done that. So I connected to the API key, extracted the tables around jobs and executions, did a bit of modeling and transformations to make sense of the data, and then included it in a semantic model that I have connected a Power BI report to. So After each morning, after this job is done, I have then scheduled a job that updates my report with the job status at 6:30. So as Maria and her company has everything else in Power BI, they track and monitor various things. It is obviously very convenient for her to also check the job status directly in Power BI. So this is how it looks like. I just set up a very simple report, stored it on create date, so you can see this job just ran successfully. You can also see a bit of information on each package and whether it was completed successfully or not. I did set up a small rule that returns the job status partly failed if just one of these packages did not run successfully. So this is an easy way to track the status of the job we just created. So what did we actually accomplish today? Well, first of all, Maria is very happy because we successfully managed to automate an end-to-end job that updates her company's sales and inventory data each morning. Compared to Black Week last year, she has now also mitigated the risk of not being able to deliver orders due to inaccurate inventory figures. So Maria can check off her goal. She can now deliver accuracy, reliability, and also optimal cost control in their data flow. As promised in the beginning of the video, all the scripts I have been using and all other relevant guides and knowledge base articles are linked to directly right under this video. And as I also said, PowerShell opens up for a lot of possibilities. I just showed you some of them today, and I can only encourage you to either put in the comments how you are using it, or even post and share your ideas directly in our community. So there's nothing left for me to say then. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, do not forget to subscribe, and see you in our next TimeXtender Tuesday.